thanks everyone coming down. Really enjoyed listening to all the tracks that everyone submitted. So just to give you a little kind of idea of the format, I'm going to have a little chat with Sinead at the start, just talk about her creative process. Then we're going to have a little look at her synths, and then go through a couple of tracks, and then I'm going to open it up to the audience if you guys have got any questions. So any burning questions, just hold on to them until the end. There'll be time for you to ask Sinead whatever you want. Try and keep it music related. But yeah, should we crack on? This is the first time I've done anything like this, so I do have notes, don't judge me. But yeah, I'm a little bit nervous, so I'm just going to keep my notes in front of me so I don't forget what I'm doing. But yeah, are we ready?
Yeah, let's go.
So, Sinead, talk us through your musical journey. How did you get into electronic music?
I've been playing piano since I was really, really young, but actually getting into the electronic stuff. I was in a band for quite a while, and we had sort of electronic elements, but it was very much like an indie kind of band. I was singing, which I don't do now, but it was very much like I was the producer, and the other person was very much like the lyricist and the writer. And then, I guess our taste started to sort of, I was always really, really into techno and really, really into going clubbing. And I guess, I got a bit bored of doing the band stuff, and I had a little bit of a break, and then I got back into it by buying my first analog synthesizer, which was the Juno 106. And I was like, okay, this is kind of the sound that I want to create. This is what all the amazing producers that I was listening to, I was like, right, okay, well, this is how we get that sound, just by buying really good synthesizers.
Expensive synths,
yeah. I was like, this is the cheats way of doing it. Yes. But I mean, God, people do amazing things in the box. I totally get that, but I'm just not that person. So yeah, as soon as I could afford my first really good synth, I was away.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you reckon you'll ever get back into the vocals?
To the band?
No, in the vocals.
I do put some sneaky vocals in sometimes.
Yeah, I sneak them in as well.
They sneak in. But yeah, they're very much affected, and quite often I think, okay, if I wrote a really cool song, how could I put some vocals in without it being kind of cheesy? But yeah. So it's always on the edge. Yeah. And then I do it, and then it just doesn't sound. Yeah, it just sounds cheesy.
Yeah.
So I just take them out.
Okay. I'd love to hear it sometime. I'm sure you could get it slip in a non-cheesy way. I'm sure it'd be fine. I suppose the first release that that really pricked my ears up was the Livity Sound release. Not only is it just an incredible release, whatever label it's released on, but it's quite different for something they've put out. Yeah. So I suppose maybe we'll just move on to talking about your creative process and how do you sort of start writing a track.
So I guess it all depends on kind of the instruments that I'm using. So for example, when I was studying my master's, I was studying classical piano performance, and I got the Vermona PERfourMER, and I knew I kind of wanted to do. There was a module on that course where it was mixing acoustic instruments with electronic instruments. So I was really into that, and I got really into kind of George Crumb, and I got really into. I played a lot of John Adams. And so I think doing that, I was like, right, okay, how do I get that kind of texture and that kind of that sound into these new synthesizers that I just bought? Yeah. And I had to sort of, there was a module where I had to do all that and build a performance. And I was away, I really, really enjoyed doing that. I loved thinking about extended techniques on the piano, and then how I could get those textures for my electronic instruments. And so that was really when my creative process started. And then I wrote a piece which kind of used those kind of John Adams minimal techniques with playing with little cells and expanding on those and getting them all to work together. And it's such a brilliant, I'll show you a bit later, but it's such a brilliant instrument for that, because you can use the 4 oscillators and have everything kind of moving at different times with polyrhythms and like slight randomizations with octaves, which we talked about.
Yeah, we talked about yesterday.
So yeah, that's kind of, and so I think it's all about like finally like being able to create the thing that you have in your mind that you want to create. That's the hard thing about being a musician. It's you have a certain goal in your mind, and if you're not reaching that goal, you think, oh, that's rubbish. But actually, yeah, it's all about finally when you can create the sound that you have always wanted to create.
I suppose, like, going on from that then, I'm always interested in, I mean, your music's always got quite a lot of emotional context to it, and I'm always interested in kind of people's mindset going into the studio. And do you always have, like, quite a clear vision, like, of what kind of emotion you want to portray in a track, or do you kind of just jam and when something sort of feels right and kind of feedback of your work? Like how does that sort of process work?
Yeah, so like after being in a band for so long and writing, like trying to write albums and not being able to come up with things that like labels liked, I was always like, right, okay, I would always be like, right, I'm not going to go into the studio today. I'm just going to like take like 3 months off and not write anything. But like eventually I kind of thought, actually, like, I think you have to just go up to the studio every single day, and even if you make absolute shit music, like, I think it's all about just creating the shit music in order to get to the good stuff. Yeah. So I think for some people it's about like taking breaks, just letting the kind of inspiration guide you. But for me, I feel it's all about like building the muscle in your brain to, just create. And eventually you just get something by just doing it and doing it and doing it and doing it. Yeah. So I guess my creative process is just to keep doing it until I get something good, but not stop doing it. Yeah,
it can be a battle, that's for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
But I suppose like just tapping more into like the emotional like side of things. Like, do you, as I said before, you know, is there something you want to express? Like do you have that in your mind? You know, like. Because I just always feel like, especially like Intimate Advance, the first time I heard that tune, it just seemed to really speak to me on such a like deeper emotional level. You know, just is there something you just need to get out there, or like? But
you really want this about my music? Like, I would love to say that it is, but I feel I go up there and I just I let the machines kind of guide me a little bit. Okay. So yeah, I mean, probably like deep down there is, but. I'm very much more like, I go up there, and if I go up there enough, then like probably things subconsciously come to the forefront, but I'm very much, I let the machines guide and my tastes guide me, and that's an important thing as well.
I apologise for my dog squeaking in there he's clearly got a burning question. Shall we talk about your setup then in the studio?
Yeah, totally.
So you've brought down a few things.
So I've got a very minimal setup. My setup is much bigger than this, but my main writing machine is obviously Ableton, and I'm very much a believer in the session view because I create all my like live jams inside the session view. And my main synthesizer, which most people like know my sound from, is the Vermona PERfourMER. And a lot of people like buy the Vermona PERfourMER, and they message me and they're like, oh, how do I get that sound? And actually it's not just the PERfourMER, it's like the effects that I use with it. So I use the Empress reverb effect, which is like, if you're going to buy any effect box, any reverb, buy the Empress reverb. It's just insanely good, and I just keep it in ghost mode, and then I put it through an echo system, and it's not synced to any BPM, so I can like improvise with the delay, and I can duck things into the delay at different like polymeters, so I can tap like different polymeters along with my poly rhythms, and you get just like this really beautiful sound. So it's not like the PERfourMER is the thing, but it's also the effects chain that I put it through. Yeah.
And so talking about the polyrhythms and polymeters, it's obviously like a strong feature of your music. So how do you go about writing the polyrhythms into your tracks?
We can look at a project here. I do everything. Everyone always thinks I use like loads of modular sequences, but I don't. Like, it sounds like I do, and I like to emulate that kind of sound. And I do have modules, but I think it was like a press release went out, and it's like the Surgeon Scale, the modular set, and I do have like a modular setup. But I very much work with like the pencil tool in Ableton. So what's really, really nice about the Vermona is basically, if I just show you, because you were asking last night.
Oh, no, well, I was trying to guess, because we obviously met up yesterday and had a little chat, and I was trying to guess how Sinead wrote her melodies, because they're all so beautiful, but they do feel like they've got this element of randomization. I got one bit right.
Yeah, like the octave randomization.
Got the octave bit right. But if I was going to plan on writing something like this, I'd use like a step sequencer with lots of like probability sort of variations, randomization, all within a sort of fixed scale that I'd
and that's
set.
what I don't do.
And and then when you told me that, I just write everything in with the pencil, I was kind of a little bit blown away.
And it takes for ages. Like,
that's what I mean. Always try and cheat.
Yeah.
But
there probably is a sequencer that does what I do, but I've tried so many different types of. I'm like, okay, how can I make this easy? I can use like scale MIDI. I can use like. Could get like a sequencer, and I've tried multiple different sequences that I think could make my life easier. But the problem is, if you put something in a scale mode, you can't have anything like outside of the scale. So, like for example, if we look here, basically, if I just show you this little part here, this might be really loud. I'm just going to play you the Vermona part. So this is the track from Sympathetic Cycles. So basically, let me just explain what's going on. So basically, the Vermona is like 4 different synths. So like 4 different voices, and you can set up what's interesting about it, you can set up the MIDI to like cycle between the voices, and so then if you put each voice into like a different octave, it just cycles through, and you get this almost like randomized quality. But you can also set each voice to work as a single voice. But basically what I do is I just use the pencil tool, and I almost like randomly put in, like I literally randomly put in the MIDI until it sounds good. So I use none of my classical training, which everyone always talks about. But I use none of that, and I just completely, I almost like, you could close your eyes and just like put in the notes. That sometimes is the best thing. Yeah. Like to not use any of your training and just actually come up with something good. And then you get like notes that aren't actually in the scale, and they probably are in a certain like mode or a certain weird scale, but and then it's all about how I'm manipulating the cutoff filter and the attack and the envelopes and stuff like that. So I mean, it's just cycling through each note, and you can hear all the different octaves, but then obviously when I turn envelopes off or turn them on, so like. It's all about like how that goes with the delay, so you can have the delay completely unsynced. And immediately you get like completely different rhythms. So I always go to like the Vermona as my like starting like riff, and then I'll come up with like a drone. So for example, on this track, I actually started the whole piece with this. So if I just quickly pause this for a second. So the polyrhythms all come from just odd length. So I never go for regular bar lengths and regular meter. So I'll always, if you look at the MIDI here, this is from the OB6, but so yeah, you can see, I will always go for odd meters. And the session view, I used to use Logic for such a long time. And even actually when I was writing the Livity Sound record, half of the EP was actually written in Logic. And I was still sort of making the transition from Logic to Ableton. But, I mean, it's just so, it's so beautiful for, improvising because you can set up your MIDI clips and have things going at different times. And I will always work. What's so nice about it is that it works vertically, not horizontally. So, yeah, it's so easy to create different variations, and that's what I love. I will always create a riff, and then I'll create 10 variations of that riff, and then I'll be able to cycle between them, basically.
Amazing. Should we listen through to the whole
whole record?
Yeah.
Should we listen to this version or the mastered version?
What would you prefer?
Let's listen to Yeah, we can listen to this version.
Yeah.
So this is the pre-master, so obviously that could be interesting. So we'll listen through and then I'll talk you through the parts. Because I remember like sending stuff to Tom, when I was studying my masters, and I got to the point in like my music where I'd not made a single piece of music like other than my classical piano playing. Like I'd not made a single piece of music for 3 years. I had like 3 years off because I hated writing music so much after being in the band. And yeah, I just got to the point where I was like, I think this is all right, but I was like, you know, when you just need someone else to be like. Yeah, and I remember sending him some, and I didn't even have like any delay or, yeah, it was like very basic tunes. And he was like, he was like, please send me more. So we just like started up like a dialogue. And I think the most important thing is to just keep writing, even if like you don't get the kind of response that you want. As long as you keep writing, eventually like you'll have all the material and all the like back like catalogue in order to give people at the right time. So I'd started developing just a lot of like back catalogue, but the thing that I couldn't ever do was write drums. Like I'm so like pernickety with the drums that I choose.
Do you use any samples when you're writing your drums?
No, I use all like analog drum machine.
So
Actually, no, I don't use samples, but what I do use is like a jazz kit on addictive drums, which is like how I get all the, and I finger drum it, so I don't put it into like a MIDI sequencer. If you've like, yeah, basically I probably just need like an actual drummer who I can sample. But like what I like is the velocity and the humanization of like, and I find addictive drums amazing for that. So I have like a really good like jazz kit that I use, and that's what does like all the snare rolls. So, for example, like...
what is that? Is that a VST or...
Yeah, like Addictive Drums is an amazing VST, which basically, if I just play you, it does... So you can do all this...
Very natural sounding.
Yeah, and you can buy, like, particular kits. It has, like, really cool electronic kits as well. But basically what I do is I literally, to no BPM and no time, so I'll put in, like, these really, probably, like, crappy like patterns, but then what I do is I love cutting up audio. I'm a bit of a geek. Like I will cut up audio till the cows come home, and I'll literally like move it to. Sometimes I I think closing your eyes and just like moving it randomly, and not worrying about the grid. Like literally like turning the grid off. Yeah. And like since I've got into like the Electron system, that's been really good because obviously you can create like randomized triggers. You can do a kind of similar thing.
I'm loving getting into the electronic.
Yeah,
it's really good.
So now I'm doing that helps.
Yeah.
But I don't think anything is as good as just like moving everything by hand, and it takes for hours. Like the I mean, it would have took me loads of goes to get the right sequence for, and I sometimes try and play this live, and it will never sound the same twice, which is kind of annoying as well. But
kind of nice.
But kind of nice, and kind of, yeah, you're always kind of slightly on the edge that it will work and it will sound good.
Yeah, I think that's why I think the music stands out so much. There's just such a human aspect to it, even though it's such a electronic and analog based sort of process that you go through. There's just so much like human. Yeah,
and I mean, if you look, I use this synthesizer. I love Vermona. I could literally, they should probably pay me to, because I have like all their synths. They don't have very many, but. That I didn't bring it today because it's quite a hefty beast, but I use the DRM Vermona drum machine quite a lot. But you can see how I've gone through like multiple versions of like the sub, like the sub roll that you hear. So for example, if I just say this actually, so I had this to begin with, which just doesn't sound good at all. And then you can see, like, I've done, like, another version. So obviously, like, where you accent is really, really important as well. So even you don't have to have, like, odd meters and odd timing. Actually, just accenting in slightly odd ways and, like, warping it. So using, like, swing. But you can see the original. So this is all the audio. This is the MIDI. So this is the MIDI of the drum machine. So it's kind of like messy looking, but And then basically you can manipulate everything by hand. So if I just solo this. But this would have started off as probably kind of like an odd time. And then I would have duplicated it. So this is completely like unprocessed at the moment. This is what I would have had like originally. And then the snare, I would have done like multiple versions of this. So I like the mixture of like the drum machines then with the addictive drums, which are like way more acoustic. Yeah, I love that mixture of like acoustic hats and acoustic snare, like with the analog circuitry of like a drum machine. Yeah.
Little taste of
Yeah.
natural sound.
Yeah.
So you also mentioned one little thing that stuck out for me there is just about just sharing your music and having the confidence to like share your music with Tom.
Yeah.
He's obviously a legend.
Yeah.
So how
such a
important?
legend.
Yeah, such a legend. So how important have other people and like the feedback from other people and kind of just sharing your music with other people? How important has that been in your process?
He was the first person.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was like, right, okay. I was looking for someone who I liked the music of. I really loved his album that he did. It was kind of ambient in itself. Like it wasn't kind of Livity Sound. Yeah.
It was really beautiful, yeah.
And I was just like, oh, hi Tom. Like, can you listen to my music? And he got back and he was like, oh my God. He's like, yeah. He was like, who are you?
And did you have like a feedback process with him?
Yeah, so it went on for a year
Yeah.
of me writing.
Because he's really, really good like that. Because I've got quite a lot of friends who've been released on Livity Sound.
Yeah.
He's been nagging me for ages.
Yeah.
But, yeah, and it's amazing how much time like he does take to nurture, you know, up and coming artists. And I think all the artists that he has spent that bit more time with, that they're always the releases that I generally like more on a label.
Yeah.
Because he puts a lot of stuff out, and it's all really
it's
good
really
quality,
regular, isn't
but
it?
I think like, for example, like I Do Plumes and you know,
really
there's
cool.
people that are really trying to push that sort of different sound, the ones that really stick out, and you know yours included. Yeah. It's nice to hear that you kind of work together to
totally.
get it there.
Yeah. And just knowing that you have like, in the end, it was just like, okay, I've got someone who I can at least like, you know, talk about music with. In the end, I didn't even think that we would do something together because I knew it was very different to Livity Sound. But yeah, in the end, we did come up with something. Yeah.
And it's we've both been working on a remix for someone. And we both were sitting at my house the other week. Yeah. And we were both a little bit lost with our remixes, but just having that little listening session, how important that was. And then within the next 2 days, we both finished it from just having that feedback of someone going, okay, it's not as bad as you think, it's all good. So.
And sometimes I find even like you finish a track and even just playing it to someone, you think it's good at the time, and then actually just playing it to someone you can hear, oh, actually that's really shit.
It's a context thing, isn't it? Like completely.
It's like, there's so many times have I thought something was amazing, and then I play it to someone, I'm like, actually, no. And it's almost like you have to step outside yourself. It's like, no, that's really shit. Actually, I can't believe I'm playing this.
It can be the other way around.
It can be the other way around. I tend to remember the other though.
Yeah, don't we all?
Yeah.
Are you up for giving us a little jam then?
Yeah, so I thought it'd be interesting to share something that's literally in the stage of like this, so the session view stage, because this is where I write all my music. I will write in the session view, and I will have like I have this, so like one of these little guys.
It's a APC40 for those who can't see it, so it's a MIDI controller.
So let me just quickly go to my live set. And yeah, I always have a battle with, right, do I make just an ambient track or do I try and add drums to it? But I'm so picky. Like, if ever I'm listening to a record, the drums will always be the thing like I hate about the other person's record, or my own, definitely my own, more than my own. So I always like, I'm stuck between, right, do I keep this as like an ambient track, or do I, start to add drums? Because I just think it can kill a track. Just adding drums that just sound, Like, there are amazing artists that I love, and as soon as the beat comes in, I'm like, oh, why did they do that?
Yeah. So
And it's the same with my own music.
So would you always say that you always start with the,
I
drums
will always-
never ever come first?
Like, just recently, I've deliberately tried to like go for a stage where I just go up to the studio and I just write a kick pattern.
Yeah.
So even if I'm feeling like not creative, I will go up and I'll make sure I come up with like a hi-hat pattern by the end of the session, or like a kick pattern. I'll make it like really technical, so I'll be like, okay, right, can I make like multiple hi-hat patterns for a later date? Can I make multiple kick patterns for a later date? And actually, like, setting yourself a tiny goal like that really, really, really helps.
Yeah, it's very specific.
Yeah.
I like that.
We
get in the wheel of
wheel of death. So I'm just going to close this. But yeah, so like this track I'm about to show you is an ambient track, but it's still one I'm writing, and I'm wondering like how could I add like drums to this. And yeah, I can write so many like ambient tracks, but I love techno as well. So it's like, yeah, so it's always a difficult like argument I have with myself all the time.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the 4/4 banger.
Yeah, oh, I've got a few, but no one else likes them. I like them. Okay. So as I play this one, you'll be able to see from the session, how many like variations I have of like a particular pattern, but I'll also be like playing the delay as well, because that's really, really important to not have the delay synced to the BPM. That's my tip for the day. So you can literally like use the delay as an instrument in itself. But yeah, so many of much of my live set is the Vermona, and then how I use the delay at different BPMs basically.
The drone that you made for what did you make that using?
Which one?
The initial drone and sympathetic cycle.
Oh, so I used like Juno 106 for that.
Yeah, it's really nice.
Yeah.
Really nice detuning on it.
And the OB6 does like the dum da da dum dum da da dum all the way through.
Yeah. And you always use a really nice. Do you usually just put like an LFO on the detuning or something?
Well, yeah, the OB6 has a really nice. Yeah, you can like pitch bend the LF. Yeah, we're using LFO.
Really nice.
Okay, here it is. It's loaded. Yes, so basically, I've only got the Vermona in, so I've pre-recorded the OB6, which does the kind of like drone stuff. If I just do this. But there's a couple I can show you because I work so much in this way.
Cool. Channels on that.
Yeah, my live set is really... I know how it works, and that's fine. Look, it's just like blocks. So my first MIDI clip is literally just all the Vermona MIDI synced to the same MIDI channel, basically. So I'm basically playing these randomized sort of notes, but you'll hear like the octaves moving between. I'll always make like a variation of that pattern, so this is the variation. But that's like a really like common way for me to work, and then but you could hopefully see like, yeah, basically I've got like mini variations of like, yeah, I've basically got variations of each part. So where the MIDI is all working like in a cyclical way, then I'll have, yeah, something coming in. But I will always have, yeah, I think the key is like multiple variations, so you never have to revisit. That's the thing, it's like if you revisit, it becomes predictable.
Yeah. And when you're going from performing like this or in your studio recording for the track, would you just keep recording until you find something, or does it usually just take you one go? Or
so I have this really annoying thing at the moment where I make like a track and I actually film the track because I do a lot of like little like live jam videos, and then when I come to record it, it never sounds the same, and I've already got like my heart set on the recording that I just did. And it never ever, like, if you hear the original, it's on YouTube, I think I'll post it on Instagram. Like, the original to Sympathetic Cycles, it sounds nothing like Sympathetic Cycles. But that's not by actual, like, yeah, it's not by design. It's just I could never get it to sound like that again.
That's just being human, though, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, and you can see from even, like, this other one, which I use in my live set, it's called Scepter. But again, you can see here, I've got multiple variations of a particular pattern. This one's kind of easier to understand because it's not as complex.
Would you say it's just, like the bulk of it though, is just one recording that you've done?
Yeah.
You don't like take little bits from one recording and cut it up, or it's just like, right, that was take 6 and that was the good one?
I think my best tracks are, yeah. But I do like, for example, the one that you like, Intimate Advance, there's so much processing on that
I like
track.
them all.
Yeah.
That's just my favourite.
It's just so I prefer the tracks that are very much like, I think it's because I have a good, like, a good memory of them because they're just easy. You just get the whole thing working with your instruments and then you can record. But sometimes tracks do need, like, the detail of, like, the pre-production. So, for example, this one, if I just quickly... So here I've set each oscillator, Vermona 1, Vermona 2, Vermona 3, Vermona 4. They're all doing slightly different patterns. They've all got different bar lengths. So you can see here, I've done like multiple versions of this pattern. If I just play this pattern. Me a while to get to that, so I might have started off with, for example, like, I would have started off with this, which I know just didn't work. So yeah, depending on where the cell starts is really, really important as well. So trying multiple versions, and then there's nothing better than the loop brace to just, move around. And again, I'm moving with slightly odd lengths. So, like, I might have tried that, or I might have tried like this. I would eventually come upon, this. And then I'll start to build on that, so I'll have something like this. Multiple versions of this pattern, so like really, really long like bar length, so it always phases around, it never quite meets. And then, but I would have tried this version, which didn't ever make it into the track, or like something like this. Like, so I'll try lots of different versions and I'll come across one I like. And then I will try adding to that. But again, odd like bar lengths. Building on just like one motif, and then having like variations, I guess.
Amazing. Thank you so much. That was incredible. Little round of applause for Sinead. So this is your opportunity to ask any questions. Is anyone going to be brave and be the first person to put their hand up? Dominic?
You were talking a lot about. Oh, hello there. You were talking a lot about going into the studio and kind of like forcing something creative out. Are you one for recycling content? Like,
oh my God,
do you,
yes.
You just pull all the sessions together at the end of the week and it's like, let's see what we can.
And I never used to think that. Like, I always used to think, right, okay, you go up to the studio, you can come up with something, because sometimes you do come up with something amazing in like 10 minutes. But I think, it's like rare. So I think it helped me to, be more philosophical about it and just be, right, okay, I may just go up and I may create something really, really shit. But as long as I've created something, I don't care if it's shit or if it's good. So I'll always, I know now, and I'm a bit older, that like, okay, I know that even if I haven't liked the thing I've made, I know I can probably use something of it. And I use a lot, I recycle all the time. That's like one of the main things that I do, absolutely.
Is that quality by quantity type technique?
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
You reach it.
Yeah,
just by
that's a really good way to describe it. Yeah, just by quantity of like going up and just creating. Absolutely, yeah. And then also actually sometimes just saying, like, giving yourself a rest and saying, right, okay, I'm just going to do a kick pattern. I'm going to do like multiple kick patterns, and that's all I'm going to do today. Or perhaps like I'm going to do some like sound design with the modular and like just create like bleeps and bloops, with no goal in mind, and that's totally cool.
Yeah, 100%. Like, definitely completely changed my workflow as soon as I took the pressure off of making a whole track.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's not about me. Who's next?
I love about you talking about your absolute rampant desire not to be predictable, and that repetition is often just a byword for predictability. I want to ask you about your melodies. I find your melodies like incandescently interesting because they're constantly evolving. They mutate. They never come back to how they were. Can you give us an insight into how you create melody?
So basically I think it's all about just this idea of I'll create one melody and then, like, for example, like a clip like this, but straight away before I even, and you can so easily like think, okay, this is cool, like this is enough, but straight away before I even lose that like adrenaline of just creating melody, I'll create a second one, and then I'll have a third one and then a fourth one. And then what I'll do is I'll perform it live. I think that's the thing maybe that I do, that maybe not everyone does. Like I will perform the melody live and I'll cycle between different parts with lots of different like lengths of like MIDI clip of bar lengths. But I don't think of a scale or I don't think anything like technical like that. I'll literally just move the mouse until, so like thousands of pounds worth of piano lessons has taught me nothing. I still just like close my eyes and just, I think I let my taste guide me and it's the variations I think that's the key. Variations with different lengths of bar, I think is like how I create like melodies that don't repeat themselves.
But that's so interesting because variation form is not a predominant form, right?
No,
at the moment.
True.
No, people are not mainly concerned with variation, they're concerned with repetition.
Yeah.
Repetition with extra layers added in.
Yeah.
Whereas your work is constantly about variation and development and mutation. So you're in a lane of your own, aren't you?
Anyone else with any more questions for Sinead? Don't be shy. This is your one chance. Here we go.
It's a pretty vague question, but you said that you were on Logic to start with and then went to Ableton.
Yeah.
I'm very much stuck on Logic and want to...
Oh my God, for years I did.
I want to... I don't know whether to exhaust all my opportunities on Logic first and master that before going over, because Logic does scare the shit out of me. I know Ableton scares the shit out of me. So would you recommend really getting into the depths of Logic first and then moving into Ableton, or do you think I'll learn a lot more from Ableton and be able to use them simultaneously?
It's really hard to go from, and like I said, I wrote half, and actually for a while I was like, right, do I start this one in Ableton or do I start this one in Logic? That is a really hard thing. And then I think the more I became more performative, like there's nothing better than Ableton Session View for that. And then now I solely almost write all my music in Ableton. But I would suggest getting to know one DAW really, really well first. I would always suggest that. And so it just becomes like second nature. So you don't have to think about the technical side of it. And so you're just creating. I think that's the key. And then eventually you can choose, because there's lots that I miss about Logic. There's lots like the mixing side of things. Because then what I did for a time, I like did it all in Logic. I brought it into Ableton to perform with it, took it out of Ableton to mix it, because I was so used to mixing in Logic. Even though I use like mostly like third-party plugins or whatever. Yeah, it was just that I loved the like layout, being able to open up multiple channels of like plugins at one time. But I just make do with Ableton now. It's just all one, it's all like streamlined in Ableton. But there's tons I miss about Logic. And I teach with Logic, so I kind of use it a little bit now and again to keep my hand in it. But my advice to you is just to get used to one DAW to begin with, and you know it really, really well. So you don't have to think about that.
That helps, thanks.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks, man. So I had a question about, obviously you got it all set up with like MIDI tracks for performance.
Yeah.
For the tracks, actually getting the track ready for like a pre-master, is that just audio takes of a performance, or do you kind of still leave some MIDI in there to kind of manipulate before you actually finish something?
Really good question. I will put it all to audio. Yeah. So even the addictive drums stuff, I love to see the actual waveform. Yeah. I never ever use MIDI for mixing, but I know that's weird. Do you use MIDI?
That's pretty normal.
I love to see I think it's way more visual. You know exactly like what's happening where, and especially as I like lining things up slightly like oddly, like especially the drums. Yeah, I feel like with the waveform, you could just so much more visual with the velocity and and I can move things like around. So basically what I do is I record, each synth. I've got a really like small, basically what I need is like a mixer which I can record everything through, but I do like one synth at a time. And actually that creates some interesting things because things are like latent, like a lot of the stuff actually is like with latency, it actually creates quite a nice, like weird,
Human again.
like polymeter in itself. So I record everything like separate, record everything to audio. I'll even like print the effects because I use a lot of like pedal effects. But I do a lot of processing as well. So there are some tracks, like Sympathetic Cycles is very much like audio, like from my analog synthesizers, but like a track like Intimate Advance, or a lot of the tracks from my latest EP, Sever, is very much like plugins and chains of plugins, which make it really hard to perform live then, actually.
But, I mean, just going off the back of that as well, do you find, I mean, personally, I always like to try and treat the mixing process kind of as a separate creative process to the like creation. So, I mean, do you feel the same? You know, like when you get to a point, you're like, right, I need to switch off a little bit from that.
Bring all the faders down.
Yeah.
Yeah, it depends on the track. Yeah, it really depends on the track. Sometimes I feel you can record in and it sounds exactly like you want it.
Yeah, the win.
Yeah. And that's why you shouldn't get like stuck on those moments, because they rarely come. So actually just being okay with it sounding really shit is also good.
Yeah. Any more questions from the audience? Yeah.
Yeah, one thing I always struggle with is working a full-time job.
Yeah.
I don't always have a lot of time to do it. So the question is, how much time do you put into it?
Yeah. Oh my God.
How much do you have to do that?
Yeah, I don't have much time. But basically, like, luckily I work a job where I have like quite long gaps between when I work, because I teach as well. So there's like a good chunk of time between semesters where I can just, concentrate on music. But that's actually the one thing that you can do if you've not got much time, is to be very like technical in the time that you do have. So things like creating like a hi-hat pattern, creating like a sound, even like collecting samples, anything that doesn't take up loads of But then there are times where I'm thinking, right, I need to like not talk to anyone. I need to just lock myself away for like a week.
That's the hard bit.
Yeah, that's the creative bit.
Yeah.
Actually, like the coming up with the melodies, like you need the time to make all the really shit melodies. Yeah, I think it's I feel like I need a good. Yeah, I often set myself like an EP over the summer. I feel like I need 2 weeks of writing the worst music I've ever written. And then on that third week, I'll have something good. But yeah, that takes time. It's really difficult. So I suggest in the time that you don't have, do anything that's not creative.
Yeah.
So like, which is we need to do all the time with music. Unfortunately, it can't all be creative. It has to be very like mechanical sometimes and like technical. And that's the moments where you don't have to be like fully, relaxed. You can do all that stuff. I'm feeling tired, basically. Yeah. Don't you think?
Any more? Over here? Cameraman.
Your mid-range and your low end on your tracks is mixed so beautifully. How do you, because a lot of your stuff is in the sort of mid-range, and you've got your hi-hats, like got the sparkly reverb, that's like very much built the top end of the track. How do you balance your mid and low range instruments? Because when you were showing the kit, and you were showing those bits, there was a lot of instruments that sort of sit in the same frequency.
Yeah.
How do you mix those to sound so glued and lovely, and we can actually hear individually? Is that a challenge that you have often?
Yeah, I have a challenge actually, like putting even bass in my tracks. I like rarely have bass in my tracks. And I feel, I need to put more bass in my tracks. But basically what I do is just a lot of like EQ, a lot of sounds that I feel, I don't really know. I would love to be like, have a really good technical answer for you there. I think I just use my ear and just, I use like a lot of EQ, a lot of like mid-side EQ I love using. A lot of compression, and a lot of bussing of like different reverbs, taking out a lot of the low end when I don't need it, so it doesn't like overcrowd. Because as you say, I use a lot of like that mid range. But I'm always working on my mixes. They never sound how I want them to sound.
I think we'd all say that.
Yeah. Oh my God. And then I think it's actually at the sound design stage. Probably is the key.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm using synths that I know work well together, frequency-wise.
And you say you don't have a lot of low end in your tracks, but I mean that alone, it does have a lot of low end like richness. True. And I think if you had started wanting to put subs in, I think it might
Be
It
too
would
much.
Yeah, exactly. And it would kind of distract too much from what you've got
Yeah.
already, you know, so I don't know if you needed it.
Yeah. So like, I use a lot of like, that's what I like Ableton as well. I mean, Logic, you can do it with like buses, but I love like having chains, and like I do a lot of like parallel processing. So yeah, I'll make sure that if I've got like a reverb on a bass, I'm you know, side chaining it to the thing that I don't want to overpower, and yeah, I do a lot of like parallel processing.
Amazing.
As we all do, I'm sure.
Last few questions. Anyone else? There? Annie?
When it comes to a track that you think might be finished, how precious are you about it? Obviously, when it's like going out on a specific label, I presume like with Tom, you'll kind of send it back and forth and get his input. But to what extent do you like seek feedback from like other producers?
Yeah, so like with Tom, he doesn't really give feedback on that. He like you send them to him, and yeah, he just is like yeah or no. I don't know. I don't really get feedback off producers, but maybe it's a good idea too. Yeah, I think I think you kind of know when it's right. But I mean, there are some tracks where I've literally got like mix 1, mix 1.1, mix 1.2, and it goes all the way to like 10.5. And then it gets really, like just one little, and then it becomes, obviously, as you all know, probably being producers, it becomes literally like 1 dB difference between each mix on like a hi-hat. But yeah, I'll hear some tracks that I've put out and I'm like, oh, I wish I'd just turned down the hi-hats a little bit there.
Yeah, you get to the point where you
Yeah.
almost, your ears get tired.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. Great.
Yeah, I think in the end you just have to like, yeah, only you will notice that 1 dB of difference. So you just got to give up on it.
Not give up. Let go.
Accept.
Sweet. Any more? One more over here.
Yeah, just on your effects as well. You said about the Empress. Are you running everything through one effect chain, or is it just individual elements?
Yes, so it's a really good question. It depends. So with the Vermona is the only thing that goes through the Empress reverb. But I've only got the Vermona with me today, but I put a lot of the things through the Echo system. And then I do a lot of in-the-box stuff. So I love like the Valhalla delay. I'm sure you all like that. I love the Native Instruments. What's it called? What's the Native Instruments delay?
The replica,
Replica, thank you. I use that a lot, even though I can't remember the title of the plugin. I'll use, I love the H delay, I absolutely love. I'll use that all the time, even though it makes you sound like you're on the beach constantly with the analog. Yeah, if your DAW doesn't open up and you sound like you're on the beach, what's the point in it? Just like with all the saturation. Yeah. Yeah, I use the H delay all the time. I've got a lot of the UAD ones too, but those are my favourites. Yeah. So, but basically, yeah, with the Vermona, I think the Vermona sound is lush, like on its own, but I think it's the reverb that people hear that they like from my music. Yeah. But if you're going to get one like reverb pedal, get the Empress. It's so much nicer than like all the like Eventide and in my opinion, like the Black Hole is so much nicer than that. Just, yeah. And it has a really nice spring reverb on it as well.
Top tips.
Yeah.
Any more final questions? Sweet. Well, I think we'll leave it there. We'll do one more round of applause for Sinead. Thank you so much.
Thanks, John.